Well, good morning, and thank you everybody for attending today. We are going to go over and do some motivational videos and some sales videos to allow people to know what it takes to be more successful. The first thing I'm going to tell you is simple. If today you decided you wanted to become a doctor, that's your goal, is to be a doctor, and you decided to go to medical school, what do you think the two things you would always make sure you took the class would be? A pen and a paper. Because just in case they cover something in today's class that may help you save someone's life, it might be a good idea. Now yes, a lot of times you're going to go to a class, a lot of times you're going to listen to a video, a lot of times you're going to read a book, and you're already going to know 90% of the content, 90% of what they're going to cover. But if you get one new idea each time, and you take the time to write it down, you're going to find a big, big difference. That's the same thing here. If you want to be successful, whether it be in life, whether it be as an entrepreneur, whether it be as a father, whether it be as a brother, whether it be a sister, anything you want to be, there's certain basic rules, basic fundamentals that make a difference. Today we're going to discuss the 80-20 rule. And it surprises me because I first got introduced to this rule in 1976. And today I still ask people, have you ever heard of the 80-20 rule? And there's still people who never understood it or never heard of it. And what the 80-20 rule means is simple. 80% of everything is done by 20%ers. And 20% of everything is done by 80%ers. So basically, 80% of our population has 20% of our wealth. We read about that all the time. 80% of the people combine for a total of 20% of properties, of stock markets, of money in the bank. And 20%ers, that top group, have 80% of our wealth. Well, this rule applies to everything in life. If you took a simple thing like, for example, if you like hockey, 80% of the goals scored in hockey are scored by 20% of the players. And 20% of the goals are scored by 80% of the players. It's the same top players all the time who are scoring the majority of the goals, because they have the habits to do that. If you take a look in business, 80% of a market is usually controlled by 20% of companies. 20% of the market is controlled by 80% of the companies. Do you follow the 80-20 rule is the question. Why is there so many 80%ers in life and so few 20%ers? Now that's not to say that if you're an 80%er, you can't become a 20%er. But why does that number stay there? And the numbers is real simple. Being successful in life is probably one of the easiest things you're ever going to accomplish, once you understand the fundamentals. And here's the first fundamental you need to understand of the 80% rule, okay? 80%ers, whenever they get an idea, and every one of us at some point in our life got excited. We got an idea, we got a dream, we got a vision, we got something that really motivated us, something that we believed in. Maybe we decided, for example, when I was 15, I don't know where the idea came from, I decided I wanted to be a dentist. I got excited about being a dentist. And I remember going to my father and mentioning it to him, and he said, well, that's a good idea, but where are you going to live? And I said, well, I'm going to live home until I finish dentist school. He goes, no, you're not. He goes, I'm not going to have you go to university and waste 3 or 4 years, because you and I know you're not going to finish it because you never finish anything you start. And he may be right, but to this day, I'll never know that. To this day, I'll never know whether or not I could have done it, because I went to my dad, who I love him to death, is an 80%er. And the average person who gets a great idea usually goes to somebody else who's average and asks them what they think. It amazes me how many times I'll talk to young people and I'll get them all excited with some of the things they can accomplish in their life. And the first thing they do is they go to their mate who's working at McDonald's and says, what do you think? Do you think I can make $50,000 a year? And what do you think the person at McDonald's is going to say? I mean, use a little bit of common sense. If you want to make $100,000 a year, do you ask someone who's making $30,000 a year how to do it? If they knew, wouldn't they be making $100,000? Or are they going to sit there and say, I could make $100,000 if I really wanted to, but I don't really want to. I kind of like the stress that $30,000 a year gives me. I kind of like to have those problems every month, I mean, if I made all that money, I wouldn't have those problems. What would I do with my extra time? It'd be kind of silly, wouldn't it? And it's the same thing in every single aspect. The average person has all big dreams and ideas, but we're not conditioned to be successful. We're conditioned to be average. That's not to say our friends and family don't love us. Absolutely they do. But the one thing that they don't want us to do is get disappointed. I had a girlfriend when I was 16 who broke up with me. I knew she loved Corvettes. So I got a goal right there. I'm going to get her back. I'm going to get a Corvette. So I happened to talk to my dad, and my dad, who loves me, said, get your head out of the clouds. Why are you dreaming so big? You're never going to own a Corvette. I've owned 4 so far in my lifetime. From his perspective, it wasn't he didn't want me to have one. He didn't want my hopes to get up. Well, what's wrong with getting your hopes up? What's wrong with getting disappointed and learning from that and coming back stronger from it? But 80%ers don't. Here's the difference. We're conditioned to be survivors. The average person can survive no problem. If all of a sudden, and you think about how many times in your lifetime something unexpected came up. You don't have any money in the bank, your bills are just basically paid, and all of a sudden your transmission goes in the car. Now maybe the week or 2 weeks before you've seen a stereo or a TV or something that cost $1,200 that you would love to buy, but you said, I don't have that money, so you didn't. All of a sudden now your transmission blows, you need your car. What do? You get it fixed, don't you? And somehow, some amazing way, you come up with the money to pay for the transmission. You found that $1,200 that you couldn't have found unless you had to. Survivors always seem, when the pressure's on, to make things work. You don't have the first of the month, the second of the first week, the second week, the third week of the month, you don't have the money for the rent. With 2 days in the month to go, you somehow find that rent money and you go, whew, I'm good for another month. You have to pay that transmission bill and you know the bill's coming due, and somehow you either save money, you don't buy as much beer as you normally do, you watch your bills, maybe you get a part-time job for a week or two, and you pay that and it's like, whew, man, I'm good for another couple of months until the next crisis comes by. The problem is that average people, 80%ers, are conditioned to be comfortable. And whenever they do get uncomfortable by a surprise, and a surprise could be a medical bill, it could be a car problem, it could be that TV broke down and you need a new TV, it could be an education expense. All of a sudden, you never had the money for young Johnny's university education, and a year before he goes to university, you realize, holy crap, we gotta save the money for the university. And somehow, some way you do. But you never save that same money in savings. The average person has it in them to be above average, but only when the pressure's on. And the moment the pressure's off, they go back to being the average person. The 20%ers rule is simple. They make money when they have no bills. They make money when there is no pressure. So any money that they make, they put into more investments. We keep hearing in newspapers every day, the rich getting richer. Why do you think that is? Because the money they make isn't being spent on bills. Their bills are paid. You have that same ability. If you had every month a transmission blow and you had to come up with $1,200, you would figure out a way. At the end of the year, you'd have $15,000 saved in investments, collecting some time of return. Whether it be through rent because you bought a property, whether it be the share market and dividends, whether it be interest in the banks, even though bank interest is low today. It's just that way of understanding. If you just take a look at the last 5 years, if you don't have $10,000 saved excess for doing nothing, if you just think about the last 5 years, if every single week, somehow, some way, you lost a $10 bill. Somehow, you went in your pocket and you pulled your phone out and $10 fell on the ground. Each week, would your life change that much in that week? Of course not. And yet right now, you'd have $10,000 set aside. It's simple little things like that. The question is, what is the 80%ers? What are they after? Why is it they say stay there? It's because the average person talks to the average person. Does anybody here think that Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, the two of the richest people in the world, spend their time talking to people who are on welfare? People who haven't paid last month's rent? Now some people say, well, Carmen, life's not fair. And you know something? I'm going to be the first person to admit, you're right. Life's not fair. If life was fair, I would look like Brad Pitt. I don't. If life was fair, I'd be able to drive a car like Michael Schumacher. I can't. I mean, can you imagine making $40 million a year driving a car fast? I volunteer for that one. It's not fair. Do you guys remember when you, ladies, do you remember when you were in school? Do you remember everybody had a friend who didn't have to study. A friend who wouldn't even read the book and walk in on the test and ace it and get 90% plus. And you could study, I could study and study and study and study and study, and it's almost like they had an airline detector when I walked into the exam room. Because the moment I walked in, it was like beep, and my mind went blank. There's times I'm sitting there trying to remember, what's my name? Because the first thing they ask for is name and date. Right? So that's not fair. Why is it fair that my friend doesn't have to study and he can pass it and I have to? So life's not fair. So if you're going to sit there and not become a 20%er because life's not fair, then you're only taking yourself down, nobody else. You may have to work harder than the average person. You may have to try harder than the average person. You may have to study harder than the average person to become that 20%er. But there's no exclusivity rules. They're not going to say there, okay, well, listen, you worked hard enough, you saved enough money, you're smart enough, but we're not letting you in the club. This is not a club you get invited to. This is a club you join. You decide that, nobody else. So you have to understand that life isn't fair, and it's not going to be fair. But you also have to ask yourself a simple question. At night, when you go out to a restaurant, and you're with your partner, and you say to your partner, what do you have? And they go, I guess I'll have champagne. Do you go, guess again? Are you the type of person who's looking at the prices on the menu before you walk in? Are you the type of person who's sitting there, and are you wearing the clothes that you want to wear, or the ones you can afford? Are you driving the car you want to drive, or the one that you can afford? Are you living where you really want to, or the one you can afford? Life's too short to just skate by. You can do better, but you got to understand the basic rules. The basic rules is maybe you have to work harder than someone else. That doesn't stop you from getting it. That's what you need to understand inside. You've got to understand that it's not fair. But the 80-20 rule is never going to change. You've got to go outside yourself. You've got to work a little bit harder. But you've got to make that decision yourself. And the moment you make that decision, you're not going to let anybody else step on your dreams. You're not going to let anybody else say to you, you can't have a Corvette. Get your head under the cloud. What are you thinking? Because they don't want to. Here's the easy way to never get disappointed. Don't have any dreams. Don't have any goals. Then you'll never be disappointed. It's almost like a loan officer at a bank. If a bank doesn't want to lose money, there's a guaranteed way to do it. Don't give any loans. But how long would the bank stay in business? So you got to take risks sometimes. I'm here to tell you probably the most important thing you need to understand as an 80%er and the 20%ers is the difference between wanting something and liking something. I'm here to tell you right now, and you may or may not believe me, that's your choice, but it is a fact, you have never wanted anything in your life that you did not get. You have never wanted anything in your life you did not get. And the reason why I say that is that if you wanted it, you would still want it. Wanting doesn't have a definite term. I want it as long as I can get it within 30 days. If I can't get it in 30 days, then I don't want it anymore. And you need to understand the difference between wanting something and like something. There's lots of things in life you may like, but you're not willing to make those sacrifices. When I started in the sales business, I was 17 years old. I didn't start in the sales business because I wanted to get in the sales business. I got into the sales business because I had an accident with my dad's car. And if anybody would have known my dad, they'd understand that not paying that $270 was not an option in 1976. Period. You know, I walked into the house, and my dad's sitting there, and he's got that smile on his face. And you know the smile when you walk in the house and somebody has it, you know they know something you don't know, but you don't know what it is? You're just looking at him and saying, uh-oh, what does he know? And then your mind starts racing because you're starting to think maybe he knows everything. And he says, how was McDonald's? And I'm thinking for a second, well, McDonald's was pretty good. Now, I had the accident at McDonald's, but it was about 3 months before, so I had completely forgotten by this point. He goes, man, that must have been a real good Big Mac for $270. And I'm thinking, what? And all of a sudden, he produces a piece of paper, and it's a court order, because the person who I backed into, okay, who I did try to do a settlement, I offered him $10. He said, we'll shove it, so I drove away. He went to small claims court and got a judgment for $270. And so my dad at that point says, you got to get a job and you got to get it tomorrow. I'm 17 years old. Life's good. I'm unemployed living with my parents. I work at a placement agency 3-4 days a week. Remember, gas, at that time, gasoline was 65 cents a gallon, not a liter. Okay, I had a motorcycle. Okay, I only had to drove the car when if I had a girlfriend who couldn't get on a motorcycle. So I had a motorcycle. It took a gallon of gas, so I filled my whole motorcycle up for 65 cents and could drive it for 200 miles. A case of beer, 12 beer, I know some of you people are going to be real jealous, was $3. I was making 60 cents an hour at the job, so 5 hours got me a case of beer. So 2 days a week, and life was good. And all of a sudden, my dad says, you got to get a job. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting saying, oh my God. And so I got into the sales business, not with the intention of being in the sales business, but with the intention of paying off an accident so I could not be in anything again. But a funny thing happened is I came in here and all of a sudden people were happy to see me. All my jobs I've ever had, you show up for the job and they go, hey asshole, go unload the truck. And all of a sudden it was, hey, how are you? Great to see you. You're looking good today. And I'm sitting there saying, is he talking to me? Like, people are actually happy to show up for work. And all of a sudden I started understanding a little bit different about the positive attitude, and I started believing in things. And I started understanding the difference between wanting and liking something. Because everybody says they want to be rich. If we went to a mall and said, if you want to be a millionaire, they'd all say yes. How many become millionaires? Because most of them would like it. When I got in this business, I got into a sales business for no other reason than I had an accident with my dad's car. Now, of course, as soon as I started making some money, the first thing I did was started introducing to a bunch of my friends. And every one of them said the same thing. Oh, Carmen, man, I'd like to make that type of money, but I don't want to work Friday nights. I mean, Friday nights, man, that's party nights, man. And I like sleeping in on Saturday mornings. So they sat there and were telling me that they wanted to make more, but they had conditions on it. So it wasn't a want, it was a like. If you want something, you don't make conditions on it. You make a plan on how to make it happen. If you like something, and we'd all like to be rich, but we don't want to work extra hours. We'd all like to go on vacation, but we don't want to really save up and take away from our beer money or our cigarette money every week so we have that money for that fancy vacation. How many times do you hear people with dreams? Oh, I wish I can go to Paris. Oh, I'd love to go to Disneyland. Well, if you would have saved $10 a week since you've been around, you'd have more than enough money to go there and back. But they weren't willing to make those sacrifices. If you want to become a 20%er, you got to really decide what you want. And you got to go to it and you have to go after it. And you can't be sitting there asking other people who are also lost how to do it. You got to be the person who does it and then comes back and bring more people to it. That is the difference. You got to be aggressive with you, not with anybody else. And you got to believe in you. If you don't believe in you, who's gonna? Now, a lot of people also sit there and say, yeah, well, Carmen, I've done some real silly things in my life. Who hasn't? The only person who knows all the screw-ups you've done is you. Don't advertise. There's no reason for you to let anybody else know. Because we all have. Every single person. And so don't think about those things. Forgive yourself for anything you've done that you feel bad about. And get over it. You're the only person you have to forgive. And get on to start realizing that you can make a difference. You deserve the difference. If not you, then who? That's the thing you need to understand. If not you, then who? Who deserves to drive a beautiful car more than you? Nobody. Who deserves to go on and live in a nice home more than you? Nobody. Who deserves to go on more nice vacations more than you? Nobody. So stop dreaming about it and start doing it. It's no more different than getting your mindset right. If you get your mindset right, guys, the rest is easy. It's as simple as that. That's all I have to say for now. Talk to you soon.